Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's policy briefing, Taiwan Crisis and Japan's Strategy, featuring Lieutenant General Koichiro Bansho, former commander of the Western Army of Japan, with commentary from Lieutenant General Chip Gregson, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, Asian and Pacific Security Affairs. My name is Shanti Shoji, Director of Programs at Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. Sasakawa USA is a nonpartisan 501c3 organization dedicated to deepening the understanding of and strengthening the relationship between the US and Japan. Our activities mainly focus on security and diplomacy through engagement of, dialogue, exchanges, publications, and networking. Today's event is being recorded and is on the record. As normal, we will have a written recap and have the video available for viewing on Sasakawa's website in the coming weeks. There will be time for Q&A later in the program. You can submit your questions anytime through the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. All right, so let's get started. I'd like to turn the program over now to Satohiro Akimoto, Chairman and President of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA.
Good morning. I am Satohiro Akimoto, President and Chairman of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. I am delighted to see you all. We have a big online crowd today from both private sector and public sector in Washington and Tokyo and in Taiwan, reflecting a high level of interest in and concern over the geopolitical and security situations surrounding Taiwan and the entire region. It is well reported that Admiral Philip Davidson, former commander of Indo-Pacific Command, who has become Sasakawa USA advisor, testified before the Senate Armed Service Committee this March that Chinese threat is manifest during this decade, in fact, in the next 6 years, based on his analysis of Chinese internal political calendar. Putting aside exact timing of potential crisis, most people in Washington and Tokyo would agree that this is a more imminent issue than we thought 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Suffice to say, there is a pressing need for the US and Japan to further develop dialogue and coordination, as there is virtually none or very limited trilateral framework to deter aggression to Taiwan. In case of Japan, former Prime Minister Abe, immediately after he resigned, publicly requested former Prime Minister Suga to make concrete progress in policy discussion on Japan's attacking capability, including longer-range missiles, to defend Japan and to keep peace in the region. But unfortunately, little progress was made, if any, mainly due to COVID-19 crisis. So this is our effort to stimulate discussion and coordination at our level. It is my honor to introduce Lieutenant General Koichiro Bansho. He is one of the best experts to talk about the subject matter. He had a long and distinguished career in Japan's Ground Self-Defense Force, culminating in the position of 35th Commander of the Western Army from 2013 to 2015. During his distinguished service, he served Japan very well by combining actual self-defense force operation and the strategic thinking in close coordination with the US counterparts. In my mind, one of the biggest contributions which General Bancho made to Japan's national defense is to make the self-defense force recognized as a reliable and respected institution in the mind of Japanese people, particularly through the visible role he played in Iraq and the Tomodachi operation. General Bansho usually has a big friendly smile, and this is important. I remember he repeatedly told members of the self-defense force patrolling on the street of Samarwa, Iraq, put the big smile on your face always, and calmly keep your finger on the trigger. This is an attitude we need today in the big scheme of things. I am equally delighted to have General Chip Gregson as a commentator today. He does not need any introduction to our audience, as he worked with the Japanese for a long time in the framework of the US-Japan Security Alliance. He was a commanding general of Marine Corps Forces Pacific, the Marine Corps Forces Central Command, covering a wide geographic area from East Africa to Middle East to Asia. He served as a commanding general of 3 MAF in Japan from 2001 to 2003. He most recently served as the Assistant Secretary of Defense, Asian and Pacific Security Affairs from 2009 to 2011. I would like to personally thank General Gregson for his guidance and the participation in many of our activities, including the US-Japan Military Program, or JUMP. With that, let's begin. General Bansho, floor is yours.
Thank you, Akimoto-san, Shanti and Lady. Good morning and good evening from Tokyo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for providing me such a great opportunity today. Now, it is a great honor and a privilege for me to make these remarks. As one old soldier, I'd like to express some comment and my awareness of issuing regarding on Taiwan crisis and the implication for Japan and our US-Japan alliance. The purpose of today's presentation is to extend my personal views of analysis on recent regional situations and Japan's measures to cope with those situations, as well as to share our challenges. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the strategic environment surrounding Japan and the importance of the southwestern Japan. The strategic environment surrounding Japan is becoming severe and difficult recently because of several security challenges. Japan's geopolitical situation is unique. Its characteristics are dictated by the fact that our archipelago lies between the Eurasian continent and the Pacific Ocean. Before and during the Cold War era, Japan prepared to strengthen its northern front to defend the nation from the potential invasion route. Especially, defense of northern part of Japan, Hokkaido to be exact, was the emphasis of Japan's homeland defense. However, after the Cold War, Japan had to adapt and prepare for the new security environment and the several new challenges once the Soviet threat has decreased. Japan's strategic emphasis transferred from the north to the southwest. China has been increasing its military budget and developing its military power in recent years, including the maritime and air operational capabilities, particularly rapidly. For example, Chinese government vessels, such as maritime surveillance ships, have been entering and drifting within Japan's territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands in the recent years. So let me talk about the geopolitical characteristic and Japan's strategic importance. I think Japan's archipelago is significant. It's a very important location and plays a very important role in establishing the power balance in the Indo-Pacific region. According to the US national security strategy, China and Russia are strong competitors. In addition, North Korea and Iran are a threat to the United States and to our rights and freedom in general. However, 3 of these 4, China, Russia, and North Korea, are located here. In addition, Japan is the only country to directly face those 3 powers. As an archipelagic nation, Japan is surrounded by the sea and has a coastline of approximately 30,000 kilometers around its roughly 6,900 islands. Among these, from the southernmost main island of Kyushu to Okinawa, there are about 2,500 remote islands, and about 200 of which are inhabited. This photo was taken at Yonaguni, The lighthouse in the front is Yonaguni Island, and mountains at the back is Taiwan. Significantly, the distance between Yonaguni and Taiwan is only 110 kilometers, that is less than 70 miles. The reach and the speed of modern systems are quickly making the operational more tactical in nature. In terms of the modern operational thinking, those distances are not far and the regions cannot be operationally separated, even if they belong to two distinct sovereign states. So let me review the very recent incident and activities by China. Even after the coronavirus outbreak at the beginning of the 2020, Beijing continued provocative activities and instigated incidents in multiple areas of the Indo-Pacific region. Even within the last few months, Chinese fighters and bombers have been intruding on Taiwan ADIZ since the 1st of October in extraordinary numbers. Chinese maritime and air incursions in Japanese territory and administered areas of the East China Sea are unusual due to the recall level in recent years. Unusually, Chinese Coast Guard vessels even chased the Japanese fishing boat near the Senkaku Island. According to the Japan Coast Guard, Chinese Coast Guard vessels invaded Japan's territorial waters around the Senkaku for more than 57 hours in October 2020. Cases indicating the improvement of the Chinese Coast Guard vessels' operational capabilities have been also confirmed. And furthermore, in just last few weeks, Chinese and Russian naval vessels fleet conducted bilateral operation in the Sea of Japan, and then they circumnavigated the Japanese archipelago. This was a first for them and demonstrated unprecedented military provocation toward Japan. We have to understand that China is executing a series of well-prepared strategies, named variously the gray zone strategy, multi-domain competition, such as China's cabbage strategy or salami slice strategy in the East China Sea and South China Seas, as well as all over the world. So nextly, I would like to touch upon US, Japan, and the multilateral effort. To cope with those situations, Japan and the United States began to formulate a more aggressive response. On March, 2+2 meetings were held in Tokyo during the first visit by two US secretaries of the Biden administration. At the time, the combined four ministers underscored the importance of the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Both governments officially confirmed the variety of Taiwan issues in unison. On April, Prime Minister Suga held Japan-US summit meeting with President Biden. The two leaders issued a joint statement that underscores the importance of peace and stability surrounding the Taiwan Strait and encourage the peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues. The G7 leaders met in Cornwall in the United Kingdom in June this year and confirmed that the importance of maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific, which is inclusive and based on the rules of law. They underscored and expressed the importance of peace and stability surrounding the Taiwan Strait and encouraged the peaceful resolution of the cross-strait issues. This was the first message in which G7 members specifically emphasized collective concern over Taiwan security. So why did the Taiwan issue become such a front-page agenda item for so many states at once? It is a simple reason that China has increased in both quality, quantity, and severity its provocation towards Taiwan and Senkaku and the East China Sea and South China Seas. So nextly, I'd like to explain what Japan can do in the case of a Taiwan crisis. In order to do this, I must touch upon the Southwest Western Wall strategy at first. Frankly speaking, this is not the authorized and official name. However, our recent strategic measures include expanding our effort in the island. Therefore, we have called those ideas collectively the Southwestern Wall strategy. In order to deter and in order to respond to any hostile activities or invasions of those islands, the self-defense force had to develop and promote the means of strengthening of the defense posture of southwestern Japan. That operational approach was entitled the Southwestern Wall strategy. This approach includes many important specifics. By strengthening the self-defense force defense posture, Japan's territory and its inhabitants were deemed vital to protect. By this means, self-defense force could accomplish its primary mission of national defense. In addition, the Southwestern Wall directly contribute to the establishing the defined defense posture of what China calls the First Island Chain. We can see the precedent of this during the Cold War, namely, they then forced the bottling up of the Soviet fleet in the Sea of Okhotsk as a paradigm for this operational approach. Now, our threat has shifted, but the operational program of limiting, restricting, hindering China's access to the Pacific has similarities to Cold War challenges and strategies. The Southwestern Wall strategy as a means of strengthening the defense of southern Japan consists of three primary measures as shown in the slide. So next slide, please. This is a self-defense forces new deployment, and the yellow point indicates the ground defense forces new camps. And the red arrows means China's route between the East China Sea and the Pacific Ocean. The first one is to place self-defense force camp and facilities at various locations throughout the southwestern islands, in addition to the main island of Okinawa. Indeed, in order to maximize the advantage of geostrategic location, it is very important to place self-defense force unit in this area during peacetime. Self-defense force unit have to conduct persistent intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, so-called ISR activities, from a peacetime to contingency in order to secure sea and air superiority. In March of 2016, the first unit was established on Yonaguni. JGSDF's Yonaguni Coast Observation Unit began its mission to conduct ISR and protect this island. According to the National Defense Program Guideline and the Midterm Defense Plan, self-defense force already opened further camps and facilities on Amami Oshima and Miyako Island. And Ishigaki camp will be opened soon. And they deploy the security unit, surface to ship unit, missile unit, and surface to air missile unit that were in charge of the initial response and security in this region. The second measures is to promote rapid deployment and concentration capability to those areas with modernized equipment and specifically tailored unit. Thus, they will be able to deter and repel the enemy threat from the outset. In 2018, the DSDF established the Ground Component Command and the Readiness Deployment Division and Brigade. Those have steadily progressed to develop a rapid deployment capabilities. On this autumn, the GSDF has been conducting the largest scale exercise in half a century. They are deploying all over Japan to develop their defense capabilities. The third point of Southwestern Wall strategy is the establishment of the Self-Defense Force Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade, ARDB, in 2018. The ARDB is the Self-Defense Force's first full-scale amphibious operations capable unit. If enemy forces manage to invade any of Japan's remote islands, prior to self-defense force deployment. Self-defense force will conduct amphibious operations to regain those islands by landing operation by JGSDF unit as part of the joint and with maritime and air self-defense force effort and in conjunction with US-Japan bilateral operations. So those three primary measures are progressing as planned. However, there are another major reason for developing strategic measures and deploying self-defense forces along the southwestern island chain. That was to contribute to strengthening our deterrence regarding Taiwan. So next, I'd like to talk about Japan's measure in the Taiwan crisis. I believe that most important things is to protect our nation's sovereignty and to defend our land, sea, airspace, as well as to protect our people. For that reason, self-defense force, government, and local government bodies are conducting the various measures along the entire Japan archipelago. As I mentioned, this will contribute to deterrence in Taiwan. Strengthening military posture in Japanese territory, especially southwestern islands next to Taiwan, will facilitate deterrence and to allow our forces to cope with the situation of any potential Taiwan crisis. Let me explain about Japan's possible activities in a potential crisis. In the peacetime, or what we call phase zero, Japan's measure along our island chain and the self-defense force existence itself are conducted and the postures for a different deterrent effect. Continuous ISR is most important activities. And as I noted, recent GSDF large-scale exercise demonstrates the importance of daily basis level planning and the confirmation of the readiness. Furthermore, self-defense forces unilateral, bilateral, and multilateral training and exercise are of a great utility. Those can become a very effective method of strategic messaging. Next slide, please. This slide is a training range around Okinawa. For example, live fire and bombing exercise range on the Kuba Island and the Taisho Island. That is belong to the Senkaku Islands, which are of course in the East China Sea, and which are in areas that are designated and authorized training areas and facilities based on the US-Japan security arrangement, will convey a strong strange message if the live firing training will be executed. And as of the gray zone, in contingency, such as gray zone situation, the government of Japan will commence measures depending on the specific of the situation. At that time, we have to recognize that the US forces will begin to conduct select strategic and operational measures, possibly including the large-scale forward deployment. In the Taiwan crisis, US forces will play the most important and essential role to deter and to stop China's military aggression and invasion of Taiwan. Significantly, Japan has a very important role, responsibility as an ally to support US forces in this reception, staging, onward movement, and integration, so-called RSOI. The government of Japan and notably the self-defense force have to conduct adequate support to and to provide strong protection for these forces. In a scenario where the Taiwan is attacked, but Japan is not to be violated, and the situation appears to be limited one, the Japanese government will define the situation important influence on Japan's security. Legally, Japanese government and the self-defense force can upgrade activities such as ISR and rear area support. During the important influence situations, Japan's most important role is to defend Japan's territory, especially to secure the southwestern islands, as well as the Senkaku Islands. At the time, there are several operational areas that the US will likely ask the government of Japan and self-defense forces for their assistance. So during these situations, those support and assistance activities will be conducted within basically Japanese territory. Security, and the protection of the US bases in Japan will be essential. Another essential activity will be logistics support to the US forces in Japan, including supply, transportation, repair, maintenance, medical services, communication, air seaport services, accommodation, engineering support, etc. So, and self-defense force will conduct the search and rescue operations and the ship inspection operations. If Japan is directly attacked, including attacks on US in Japan's territory, or if the government of Japan defines the situation as a threat to Japan's survival, Japan's involvement could include combat operation and the use of armed force. Should Japan get attacked or Japanese government define conditions as being the threat to Japan's survival, self-defense force has the responsibility to conduct the full spectrum of military activities as authorized in Japan's 2015 security legislation. Of course, to include the use of force by using all means. The self-defense force will conduct defensive operations such as missile defense, air defense, counter-air operations, maritime operations, anti-submarine operations, mine warfare, anti-ship operations, land operation also. And specifically of the self-defense force, combat search and rescue and the personal recovery are also very important, and likely using Japan's unique US-2 amphibious aircraft capability will be available. As these examples suggest, the United States could expect Japan to use those capabilities to support and contribute to any conflict near Taiwan with the use of force. I think Taiwan crisis is automatically a Japan contingency. To think of their geopolitical features and their impact, we have to prepare full spectrum operations and full support of US forces committed to those crises. It will be necessary and essential to conduct activities on the Japan's initiative. And also, I'd like to touch upon the other considerations for the Taiwan crisis. During the contingency, we have to pay attention to other important issues, such as Chinese cyber attack, hybrid operations with special operations, and we always have to consider the severity of Taiwan's security situation. If the Taiwan has been getting worse, Japanese government needed to initiate non-combatant evacuation operations, NEO, of Japanese, American, and other foreign nationals from Taiwan. And at the same time, the government of Japan has to handle refugee flows into Japan, especially into southwestern islands. Furthermore, we have to prepare for the cognitive domain warfare, such as utilizing information operations, deception by fake news or disinformation. We have to consider not only traditional and geopolitical warfare, but also cross-domain or cognitive domain warfare as being effective instrument for accomplishment of mission. So nextly, I'd like to move the topic that is our challenges and the ways forward to the next step. Please look at this slide, triangle. To understand our challenges and the necessary measures regarding any Taiwan crisis, we must consider the nature of trilateral relation between Japan and the United States and Taiwan. Japan and the United States have a very strong alliance with Red Line, and the US and Taiwan have the Taiwan Relation Act as a blue line. However, number one, Japan doesn't have official diplomatic and military contact with Taiwan. Number two, existing measures between Japan and the United States are not enough to coordinate bilateral cooperation in any Taiwan crisis, I suppose it. And third, it is also obvious that those three players do not have adequate cooperation and consultation mechanism for the proper management of the Taiwan crisis. So with regard to the number one, the Japanese government has limited the relationship to have only working economic relation on a non-governmental basis with Taiwan since 1972. So there are almost no official communication mechanism and no official route for coordinating and discussing military matters or military cooperation between Japan and Taiwan. So Japan should create Japanese version of the Taiwan Relation Act for establishing the legal basis to cooperate and support Taiwan. And Japan should promote military to military communication more actively. With respect to number 2, furthermore, Japan and the United States have only discussed and coordinated how to support Taiwan from a peacetime to crisis in a limited way. I believe the Japanese government and the US government, as well as the self-defense force and the US forces, should have close consultation and hard working for effective planning and strategy. However, this will be very important agenda for next Japan-US defense guidelines. And as of number 3, of course, Japan and the US should create a trilateral relationship. I welcome the fact that the Japan-Taiwan Exchange Association, that are unofficial representative of government of Japan to Taiwan, recently joined the Global Cooperation and Training Framework, GCTF. This is one step in the Japanese government supporting the trilateral framework. So those efforts are also very important. And the next point is Japan's unilateral effort. In addition to the Prime Minister's and President Biden's joint statement, recently, another former Prime Minister, Mr. Aso, mentioned Japan must defend Taiwan with United States if Taiwan needs to be invaded by China. As I mentioned, Taiwan crisis is also a Japan crisis. So we have to prepare for the worst scenario and to create a peaceful and stable situation. In order to create this, we need to update our strategy and accelerate Japan's defense build-up with budget and defense capabilities. According to the LDP's, Liberal Democratic Ruling Party's manifesto for the recent general election, they announced that Japan's defense spending should be increased from 1% to 2% of the GDP in the future. In this sense, it will be good timing to review Japan's national security strategy and NDPO. And also, it is good time to formulate Japan's new defense strategy in the near future. At this time, Japan should promote the strengthening the defense capability more, especially at the southwestern islands. We have to upgrade of the sustainability and resiliency for self-defense force and for host nation support to United States forces and friendly forces. Japan also have to consider the economic security to protect and secure our national interest. As of US-Japan Cooperation, revision of the US-Japan defense guideline will be needed. The current guidelines were formulated in 2017. However, since then, the situation surrounding both nations has drastically changed and become more complex. And strengthening seat structures is also very important, for example. We need to establish a permanent joint and bilateral command structure co-headed by self-defense and the US senior leaders to operate in any situation on the theater from a peacetime or warning. And US-Japan should upgrade the increase of the opportunities as a strong message for the bilateral, multilateral activities to demonstrate our will and determination to deter China. We should conduct appropriate different deterrent activities with well-coordinated training and demonstrations as effective strategic message. And another point, I would like to address the issue of the extended deterrence or the nuclear umbrella. We know that the US-Taiwan Relation Act will include providing weapons, taking adequate measures for Taiwan security. However, it is unclear whether the US will offer the nuclear umbrella to Taiwan or not. Of course, this issue is guided by US policy of strategic ambiguity. In order to demonstrate the more positive and stronger strategic messaging, this point needed to be more carefully considered in my assessment. So as of my conclusion, I'd like to say my small comment. Facing this complex and unstable strategic environment, what do we do? What do we have to initiate and develop as a suitable strategy and appropriate measures? How do we develop our measures to upgrade and deterrence of Taiwan and to support and protect Taiwan from China's increasingly active and strong challenges? Therefore, based on the US-Japan security arrangement, Japan needs to increase its effort to develop effective strategic and operational defense capabilities in order to defend Japan and to maintain the current as well as any future Taiwan situations. Japan's effort and further development of the operational capabilities will be the touchstone of our future posture. As I mentioned, recent program to activate Southwestern War strategy will demonstrate Japan's strong intention to deter aggression and to establish an anti-A2AD strategy. This becomes apparent when considering Japan's ongoing placement of military base along the Southwest Island and its upgrading of the self-defense force rapid deployment capabilities. They say that the best way to predict our future is to create it. The best time is now to create a new future. The most important point of crisis management are to prepare for the worst and how to prevent a crisis from happening in the first place. Applying those to the problem before us, they clearly point to the need to develop an adequate deterrence posture and capability to support Taiwan. We are in a period of big change and are in a turning point. So in the Pacific region and the global arena are becoming increasingly unstable. In such an environment, the significance of the peace and the security of the Taiwan Strait means the success and the victory of the Japan-US alliance. Therefore, this alliance is critically important for contributing and deterrence and stability. At the end of my remarks, I would like to say again and again, Taiwan crisis is also Japan crisis. So this concludes my kickoff presentation. Thank you for your attention. And thank you very much for providing me such a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Bansho. You provided clear, informative, and thoughtful remarks, and you stimulated lots of thought and provide a framework for further discussion later. I would like to invite General Gregson for his comment. General Gregson.
Well, good morning to the United States and konbawa to our friends in Japan. And thank you to Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA for presenting this very important topic. And thanks to my good friend, General Bancho, for a very, very compelling presentation. I wish to highlight and emphasize 5 important points in General Bancho's presentation. First, please note that a career ground self-defense force officer, an Army officer in American terminology, just presented a compelling description of the maritime threat and the joint and combined capabilities and responses needed to meet this threat. This type of thinking, breaking with the paradigms of the past, must extend throughout the government, not just throughout our respective forces. It is no longer a world where navies only fight other navies at sea, armies only fight other armies on land, and airplanes fight each other in the wild blue. It is in the littoral or littoral areas of the region where forces in the physical domains of land, sea, and air can have a decisive effect on each other across these 3 domains. The expanding technology of the precision strike regime, specifically the incredible increases in the range and accuracy of weapons, creates an environment where forces on land, at sea, and in the air can affect each other at great distances far more than ever before. The second point is that we must enhance our alliance capabilities. Our alliance forces in these domains must be operationally integrated in the same common operating picture in maneuver and fire control, and mutually reinforcing in real time in ways not seen in earlier conflicts. In concise terms, our mission is the defense of the territory, the interest and the lives of Japan by denying any enemy control of the sea and the air. To do this, we must all be in the same fight without boundaries among our forces. General Bancho's calls to strengthen the alliance command and control capabilities through the creation of joint U.S. and operational command elements for our respective forces, and for upgrading the alliance coordination mechanism to a full-time, fully staffed crisis information and management center to serve our respective national command authorities are essential to drive both peacetime capability development and to enable rapid transition in crisis. A third point is the connection between China's military coercion and its political warfare in what is called the gray zone, an umbrella term covering China's United Front work against Japan, Taiwan, and other nations in all areas of national life, including economics, information, finances, and more. This includes, lately, aerial and seaborne intrusions by military and non-military forces, China's maritime militia and Coast Guard. All of this is designed to back up China's extensive claims to sovereignty and access outside of accepted international law. Gray zone coercion grows strength as the ever-present Chinese military capability grows. Strong deterrence based on an undoubted capability to prevail is needed to counter China's gray zone coercion and the Chinese military threat. A fourth point is the compelling geography and geopolitical connections between of China and Japan. General Bancho's second slide, you should see it on your screen now, shows the region in its proper perspective. It's a map that I have seen in every Japanese official's office that I have been privileged to visit. Its message is much more compelling and conveys a much greater geographical appreciation than the Mercator projection that Americans are often accustomed to. It shows the relationship among the first and second island chains. It shows Iwo-to, the Bonin Islands, the Marianas, Guam, Yap, Palau, the Philippines, and all of Okinawa Prefecture are here. Note the literal or littoral connection from mainland Japan to Taiwan through the hundreds of islands in Okinawa Prefecture. Without these islands, we would have no East China Sea. Without a free and democratic Taiwan, Japan's sea lines through which its energy flows and its commerce flows are threatened. Therefore, a massive strengthening of the Southwest Islands, the Southwest Wall, is essential. A fifth point speaks to the Japan-US triangle in General Bancho's last slide. The Taiwan Relations Act passed into US law in 1979, more than 15 years before Taiwan became a vibrant democratic country. The act is clear that we must provide defense services to Taiwan as well as weapons. The act states, quote, "The United States will make available to Taiwan such defense articles and defense services in such quantity as may be necessary to enable Taiwan to maintain a sufficient self-defense capability." The provision of certain experts to assist Taiwan's training efforts, as became public recently, certainly qualifies as services. This legal obligation to assist with Taiwan's self-defense entails a moral obligation to assist with that project and to ensure its success. Strategic ambiguity, a much discussed term lately, the practice of not specifying whether the United States would come to the defense of Taiwan, grew from the imposition of the Taiwan Relations Act. Taiwan was under martial law when the Taiwan Relations Act went into force. But note, never did we say we would not. We have demonstrated action as precedent from the 1954 and 55 shelling of Chinmen and Mazu through other crises in 1958 to the 1995-96 missile crises to recent issues in 2019 and 2020, the U.S. supported Taiwan. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment.
General Gregson, thank you very much for your insightful comments. I would like to invite General Bansho if he has any comments to General Gregson's comment.
Thank you, General Gregson and Akimoto-san. I'm very happy to hear your great comment, and I'm very pleased to hear your perspectives. Jim Gregson is my great mentor for more than 20 years. When I was a Lieutenant Colonel, he was in charge of the Asia Pacific. And in those days, he always have a great lesson and a great instruction to me. And today, I think the same thing. And thank you very much. And I fully agree with your comment. But as of the your comment, as of the strategic ambiguity, so I just raised the my issues of U.S. extended defense to Taiwan, so-called the nuclear umbrella. That is strongly related to the strategic ambiguity. But how about the strategic ambiguity is so effective or not? I think there is two concepts. One is strategic ambiguity, and one is strategic clarity. Of course, strategic clarity is very difficult, but I think we have to proceed. The ambiguity strategy might be very important. Anyway, how to support Taiwan and how to maintain the situation. U.S. attitude might be very, very important. So I think the U.S. attitude might be a key point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chip, you have an opportunity to say a word or two before we open up Q&A to General Bansho's remark. Do you think President Biden recently said that it's a duty for the United States to come to defense of Taiwan, and then Press Secretary quickly try to navigate rhetoric. But do you think it's still useful to keep a strategic ambiguity? Is it becoming, as Mr. Bansho said, ambiguous strategy?
Well, Mr. Biden walked into what's referred to in soccer or football as an own goal there. This continues a long string of presidential statements regarding the U.S. and Taiwan that those who oppose our views exploit at times, like Mr. Biden was trapped into. There's a vigorous debate in the United States about whether we should shift now to strategic clarity. The argument on their side is pretty compelling with China's rapid and continuing military buildup, their continued development of amphibious operational skills, which can only be aimed at one place, their increasing gray zone warfare, all of the things that we're very well familiar with. So there is a case to walk away from this. On the other hand, there is a strong moral obligation within the prescriptions of the Taiwan Relations Act, when we have stayed with that since the imposition of the Taiwan Relations Act and through all the relations. And I think it's rather than continuing to parse words and worry about different policy permutations, we need action. And a lot of the action is contained in what General Bancho said, that we need to enhance our conventional deterrent capabilities. Put it another way, we need to enhance our alliance defense capabilities, and there's many ways to do that. We need to not look at 2035, we need to look at 2025, and we need to look at what Xi Jinping has said and start taking him at his word and make preparations.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to questions from audience. We got several questions already. The first one is from Emma Charlotte Avery, Congressional Research Service. Thank you for your description of how the self-defense force would operate in the event of Taiwan crisis. This is a question to General Bansho. To what extent is this strategy a consensus among Tokyo's leadership? Do you think the Japanese government communicated well with its public about how involved the self-defense force would be in the Taiwan contingency? How controversial is this change in Japan's approach to Taiwan issue? So this is a question about internal Japanese policy discussion. General Bancho.
Thank you very much. Very good question. And just in Japan, we concluded the general election. And as you know very well, the ruling party won. So the general trend to the defense policy is positive, and so not to be changed so much. And the recent discussion over defense policy is more so constructive. For example, attacking capabilities or long-range missile capabilities should be kept for self-defense force, or so expenditures for the defense budget might be doubled, 2% of the GDPs compared to the same as the NATO rate. Also, such a discussion will be in the stage. So I think, generally speaking, the situation of the Japan is how do I say, stable. But as of the Taiwan discussions, yes, this might be very difficult, especially how do we think about the situation awareness, and how do we think about the decision making? As I explained, the Japanese government and Taiwan do not have official route, and we have no specific military to military cooperation. During my active service, this is restricted. So in such situations, of course, I'm not sure the recent situation, but generally speaking, that the relation is very few. So at that time, how do we do? So that's problem. Based on regarding to the legislation, legislation itself was greatly upgraded since the 2015 legislation. So as I explained, each the legal basis are almost completed. So it depends on the decision of the government. And also, as you mentioned, this is depend on the public opinions. So that's why we have to discuss, frankly speaking, and we have to discuss about the actual current situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chip, observing from the United States, do you see more or less consensus among the Japanese leaders on this issue?
Emma always asks very, very good questions, not just of General Bancho, but of Americans. One way to answer Emma's question is we don't know. It would depend on the time and the situation. But let me go back to one of the recommendations that General Bancho had in his talk. We need to get better at coordination and situational awareness. And we need to build the capability to have options in the event of certain tactics like the one Emma brought out. We need a joint U.S. operational headquarters in Japan. We have U.S. Forces Japan, but they do the joint committee work. We need to have a joint headquarters there. It needs to be a 3-star like General Bancho recommended, not a 4-star because of amount and the political considerations. Let's put it on the American side. We need the same capability on the Japanese side, and we need to upgrade the alliance coordination mechanism. A good friend of mine always recommends that American officials ask to see the room where the alliance coordination mechanism is whenever they go to Japan. Well, of course, it's not a room. It's episodic. it needs to be full-time. It needs to be fully staffed, not just with military people, but with the full range of government functions, so that the U.S. and Japan can stay coordinated before the crisis and develop options, both political, not both, but political, economic, informational, military, all the governmental functions to coordinate our defense policy and the security of Japan, and build options for numerous things like the one Emma brought up about the approaching the eastern shore of Taiwan. As early as 2000, when General Bancho and I first met in the senior leaders seminars that the U.S. And Japan organized among the ground self-defense force, the U.S. Army and the Marines, we were looking at the problem of Chinese attack on Yonaguni Island as a way to isolate Taiwan. So this is not a new problem. But since 2000, we haven't done the work, haven't been able to do the work to create detailed counter options. And that's a matter, as I've said earlier in my remarks, it's a matter of some urgency. We're not looking at 2035, we're looking at very much at the near term here, and we need to act in the near term. Action this day, as Churchill used to say.
Thank you very much. With regard to Emma's question about Japanese government effort to communicate with the Japanese public, I just wanted to add one aspect that just up until very recently, even talking about the defense of Taiwan is almost like a taboo in Japanese conversation. But today, I think the issue surrounding Taiwan, defense of Taiwan, what we're going to do with in case of a crisis, has become part of a daily national debate in Japan. So people started to talk openly, media cover this openly, and I think Japan has made already a great progress in terms of further developing strategy and gain consensus within Japanese politics. I'd like to go to a question by Senior Director, Sasakawa USA, Jim Schoaf. Jim?
Good to see everybody. Thank you for the presentations today. General Bancho, I wanted to ask, you alluded to the likelihood that there will be some greater defense spending in Japan. It may not rise to 2% very quickly, but I think it will grow. And I wondered if you thought within the MOD and the self-defense forces, is there some general consensus about how to spend additional defense resources, what the priorities are if they become available? And what would you recommend in that regard? And how much do Taiwan scenarios factor into that, those priorities? And then for Chip, I wonder if from the US perspective, whether or not you see what we'd like Japan to spend on defense as the same set of priorities as Japan puts together. Thank you very much.
General Bansho?
Yes. Jim, how are you? And thank you very much for your good question. I was a G5. I was in charge of the defense budget, and I was in charge of the midterm defense plan or national defense program guidelines during the former administration. And defense budget was decreasing every year, and very, very difficult days. But after the Abe administration started, the defense budget is gradually increased, but still limited. So we need, as a self-defense force, we need more money for everything. That is not the priorities. That is frankly speaking. We need sophisticated weapons, but at the same time, we need, as I mentioned, sustainability and resilience is also very important, especially as of the Southwestern War strategy and the defense capabilities in the Southwestern Islands. I think that is just episode 1, just started. Of course, we established the new camps, 4 camps already, and 1 new camp will be opened, and Okinawa will be strengthened, but that is still limited. So we needed to consolidate the strengths and strength of the soldiers and the strength of the weapons. And also, we have to strengthen the logistics capabilities, especially supply. It's really important. Remote island is like Middle East, far from base and far from Japan. So we have to transport it. We have to feed it. So fuel, ammunition, and food, many things, everything. How do we stretch? How do we supply? So such kind of the sustainability is critically important. And also to look at the strategic environment, resiliency might be very important to cope with the Chinese missile capabilities or Chinese attacking capabilities. We have to protect weapons and protect bases and protect facilities, protect peoples. So such kind of the resiliency might be very, very important. So that's why I think there is no priorities. Everything self-defense force needs much money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chip, any comment?
The needs are many. Perhaps we should start with something that is at the root of building capability, and that's human capital. Both Taiwan and Japan have experienced difficulties recruiting in recent years. We need to, the government of Japan and the United States need to enhance the image, the reputation, the status of the self-defense force within Japan with whatever it takes, public information campaigns, et cetera, plus looking at better pay, looking at better career advancement, looking at whatever is needed to fix the recruiting problems so that we can attract the best and the brightest to serve the nation and help to solve some of these wicked problems.
Thank you very much. Next, I have a question from Mr. Hisano of Mitsubishi Heavy. Essentially, the question is Japan and also are Japan and United States ready for possible attacks on the east coast of Taiwan, not the west coast of Taiwan? What, how does Japan respond to this type of operation? You show the picture of Yonaguni Island. Thank you. General Bansho.
Thank you. Today, I didn't touch upon the scenario, actually, because there is so many cases to be considered. When the Taiwan situation will be happened, maybe hundreds more scenarios. So that's why we have to prepare for everything. Of course, Taiwanese military is thinking about the this war plan, but as Japan, as I mentioned today, the distance between Taiwan and Yonaguni is only 110 kilometers. Just same as the Tokyo and Mount Fuji, very, very close. So this is so directly affected. So if the operation will be conducted on the east side of the Taiwan, of course, Taiwan is under the maybe route of the Chinese military capabilities. So this is so hot zone at that time. So of course we have to think about that. So our concept is prepare for the worst. So we're always thinking about such kind of scenarios, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Chip? General Gregson?
Well, it's hard to blue sky the operational scenarios without in a forum like this. There's a number of options. I go back to we need to get serious about doing a lot of contingency planning together, the United States and Japan. We need to do a lot of practice. We need to develop the capabilities to operate together. And that would be job one.
Thank you. There has been some media report and debates about Biden administration possibly revise sole purpose, no first use policy. We've been talking about a mostly conventional forces element, but what your view on this debate? I will start with the Chip on this one.
I would recommend absolutely no change to our no first use policy. It's served us well throughout the Cold War, and I don't see anything that would be compelling to change it, especially in this era when nuclear proliferation seems to be moving in a very dangerous direction, with North Korea's ever increasing acquisition of weapons of ever greater capability, among others.
Thank you. We saw uncomfortable situation between United States and France at the time of announcement of AUKUS, precisely because of a lack of communication with France. But on this issue of non-first use, sole purpose, do you think United States is communicating well with its allies?
Well, specifically our NATO allies, yes, I certainly hope that's going on. I have no reason to believe it is not.
With the Asian allies?
I'm not privy to those discussions, but again, I would hope that those discussions are going on.
Thank you very much.
Go back to my recommendation that we have to very much enhance what we call the alliance coordination mechanism to make sure that things are well coordinated, and that we don't have to go through the building of relationships and command and control things like we did on 3/11 after the triple disaster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, General Bansho played a major role in that. General Bansho.
As of the no first use, for Japan, it is not understandable, not comfortable. That policy, U.S. policy, not to be changed. And so nuclear policy is a very, very sensitive and very important, but we have to discuss it. So in order to develop our extended deterrence capabilities. So the consultation or close discussion will be very, very essential between the allies. I think so. And as of the experience of the March 11th, I was in charge of the Japan-US Bilateral Coordination Center. I was in charge of the Tomodachi operations. At that time, I was so impressed, and I was so moved to see and to operate with American counterpart. They understood and they respect us. We respect them. So a mutual respect was existing. And strategic communication was very smooth. And we fought to establish, to accomplish our mutual goals. So that's why I always said, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So that is the I think core part of our alliance. Anyway, so we have to coordinate, and as General Gregson said, as of the war plan or planning, that is very important to think about the Taiwan crisis. Our problem or our challenge is that is the limited, and that is a very, very small portion. That's why. But the Taiwan issue is critically important and strongly affected to Japan's national security and the U.S. security. So that's why we have to open our route, and we have to activate our relations with Taiwan. Frankly, I think that is a lesson learned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just got a message from Ambassador Masafumi Ishii who just made actually a presentation at the Sasakawa on Japan's view on the ASEAN summit. He said, I believe we are coordinating well with the United States about non-first use and sole purpose. So our communication is good, according to Ambassador Ishii. I'd like to pick up perhaps the last question from the audience, which is actually about Russia, or the coordination between China and Russia. Recently, Chinese and Russian warships passed Tsugaru Strait together. What are Tokyo's views about the growing strategic convergence of interest between China and Russia? Does Russia has a role to play in terms of Taiwan crisis? General Bansho.
Thank you very much. That is a very important question. We are uncomfortable to see the bilateral Navy's fleet pass through from Tsugaru Strait and then pass through the Oshima Islands, and again they pass through the Osumi Strait. It is maybe there is a demonstration to see Japan and to demonstrate their will, but that is not so contribute to the peace and stability in this region. Important thing is not demonstration. Important thing is to make an effort to reduce the risk and to reduce the problems, difficulties. So that's why we have to need to communicate them. And especially the Russian attitude was a concern about that. As I mentioned, our strategic strong point was shifted from north to southwest. But recently, we have to pay attention to the three fronts at the same time. From north, Russia, and the middle is North Korea, and the south is China. So that is an uncomfortable situation. So anyway, that is the current situation. So that's why we have to need to cooperate with the US and our allies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Gregson.
It's an indication of the hazards of the neighborhood that Japan is in, and we need to be able to counter it. There's a number of options to make sure that we're presenting a posture that is consistent with convincing deterrence.
Thank you very much. We have reached 10:15, and I still have several other questions, but I like to take them as an indication that we should do this again and on this important subject matter. So I just wanted to thank General Bansho for paying lots of attention to prepare your presentation and remarks. As a matter of fact, we have a request to publish your speech as a paper, which we intend to do. So, I just wanted to thank you very much for your effort and contribution to make this event worthwhile. I also like to thank General Gregson for generously providing your guidance and support to our program, not only just General Bansho's speech today, but in general. And I would like to do my best to continue to contribute in this dialogue. With that, I'd like to conclude today's event. And again, thank you very much, General Bansho, General Gregson, and thank you for all the audience who mostly stick to the very end. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.